we have Denise as our third speaker.
Hi, everybody. I am Denise Duffield, and I'm so grateful to be here with you all today. I was at the conference in 2022 in Washington, D.C., and that was really an amazing conference and met fantastic people while we were there. So I always like to start, before we talk about Back from the Brink, just a little bit to center us in why we're here and what we're facing right now. There are some 500 nuclear weapons on the planet today, 90% of which are possessed by the US and Russia. Most of them are substantially larger than the bombs that dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki by exponentially. We have 900 of them on here, trigger alert, that can be launched in 15 minutes. We, of course, are in an incredibly unique and turbulent time with rising geopolitical tensions. We have a policy that the U.S. has a policy that the president has the sole unchecked authority to launch a nuclear weapon. The U.S. also has not adopted a no first use policy, which means that we will only, which undercuts all the arguments that we have possess these weapons for deterrence. And deterrence itself is a huge challenge. It's this belief that if I have nuclear weapons and you have nuclear weapons, and that's what keeps us safe, because neither one of us will use us. And of course, that presupposes having rational state actors. It presupposes that we don't have technological problems. It presupposes all kinds of things. And it's also morally, it's got to be the lowest bar you could possibly have to not have a no first use policy. We're basically threatening to commit mass murder just by possessing these weapons. And of course, there's a staggering cost, which is also a moral issue, particularly now when we're seeing so many cuts to critical things, to healthcare, to cities reeling from cuts to very critical needs. Yet we are rebuilding our entire arsenal, every warhead, bomber, sub, and missile. So expending tremendous amounts of our tax dollars on weapons of mass destruction, while all of these life-affirming policies and funds and programs are being slashed. And a lot of this, of course, has to do with the nuclear industrial complex, with the corporations, the Raytheons, the Boeings, the Lockheed Martins of the world, loving our Congress. And by the way, when it comes to nuclear weapons, in many ways, there hasn't been a lot of daylight between the two parties. I think that is changing, but we have a lot of work to do, even with folks who are supposedly more supportive of humanitarian policies. So, key challenges. Some of the key challenges in organizing to abolish nuclear weapon are just visibility of the issue. A lot of them, people not knowing that there's something they actually can do about it. I chose these pictures here. So I'm bi-coastal. I live in Michigan, I actually live in Kalamazoo, and I still have my job in LA. Life happened during COVID, as it did for a lot of people. So I was really happy to go to the No Kings protest in Lansing, which, by the way, met the mayor of Lansing, who was a co-sponsor of the United States Conference of Mayors resolution about nuclear abolition. So that was fantastic. And when you go to these things, you will see every issue that there is, but you don't see this one. And so part of me, like my sort of internal metric, is that when I go to national mobilizations and I start seeing signs about nuclear weapons, particularly from people I don't know, I'll know that that'll be another metric of progress for me. But people don't know that there's things you can do about it, just like you can. So Congress people don't hear about it. They don't hear about it from the constituents, and that means there's little reason for them to do anything. We also have a history of nuclear abolition that's been led by Beltway organizations that are really great and are great partners to us, but they don't have grassroots networks, and that is where the power has to come from the people. It has to come from the bottom up if we want to make real change, and our decision makers need to hear from the people who put them in their jobs. Despite having lots of intersections with lots of other social issues, people still don't understand the incredible environmental health, the racial injustice that goes along with the nuclear enterprise. And so making these connections is also very important. But more than anything, I think it's that agency. It's about what can I do about it? This is an issue that's out there somewhere. I can't do anything about it. Enter. So Back from the Brink was founded to address that core problem. It was founded in 2017 after the adoption of the UN Treaty on Nuclear Weapons as a vehicle to build public demand and political will for nuclear abolition, primarily through local community-based organizing. And this is a photo of us at the 3MSP gathering in March. And I have to say that I've been with this from the beginning, that as I put together this PowerPoint, I cannot believe how much this enterprise has changed in 2 years. So I'm hoping this is going to be the positive good news story, because as I put it together, I was like, wait a minute, this is what we said we were going to do in the beginning. Oh my gosh, we are actually doing it. And I'm happy to show you some slides on that. So this was a wonderful moment for us. We had lots of our hubs there. We had students that we work with. A little bit about the TPNW, which Kim told you some about. Again, this is a treaty that is modeled off of treaties that we already have that ban all other kinds of indiscriminate weapons of war. Nuclear weapons, however, are not one that is included in that category. And I think that one of the defining things that is so important about this treaty is that it really is informed by humanitarian impacts. And so the victim assistance, environmental remediation is sort of centered. And when you go to these gatherings about the treaty, you will see the frontline communities there. And that has not really been something that we've seen much. So recognizing the humanitarian impact is really key to the treaty. Back from the Brink's primary North Star policy goal is for the U.S. to lead an effort for a verifiable agreement among nuclear armed weapon states to eliminate their arsenals. This has been a goal of every president since Kennedy. Have said we want a world without nuclear weapons. We want to sit down. We want to do an agreement, and so it's not a shocking ask, but it is, of course, given where we are today. Renouncing the option of using nuclear weapons first, ending the sole unchecked authority of the president to launch a nuclear attack, taking the weapons off of air trigger alert, and canceling the plan to rebuild all of them are also part of our common sense policy solutions. We have been endorsed by 499 organizations, which means if you have belonged to an organization that has not yet endorsed Back from the Brink, you could be 500. You could be 500. We will put it in the newsletter. Really. And of course, Pax Christi is not only an endorser, but it's also a partner organization of Back from the Brink. And again, the organizing, the theory of change really is about local organizing for national impact. And so these are just sort of some slides that show some folks out in the field doing what we do. And a lot of what we do is how we got started and what's helped build the movement. And it has been an incredible educational, organizing, and advocacy tool, have been these resolutions. And so we provide a sample resolution, and people can customize it to their cities. The sample resolutions always end with calling for that policy platform. But we have over 80 cities, counties, and states, large ones: Los Angeles, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., Salt Lake City, Minneapolis, Philadelphia, so the entire states of California, Oregon, and legislative bodies in New York, Maine, and Rhode Island. And this is what they look like. They're just two pieces of paper. So this is something that any activist can take. You can go and get other organizations in your community on board. Do you want to work with us in the city of Los Angeles? This is what I did. I reached out to the veterans, reached out to the students, reached out to Pax Christi Southern California was part of that effort as well. We're going to do this resolution. And then, so we have our coalition together, and then you find someone to introduce it on the council. And they're really short statements, but they're really educational. They have you can give elected officials all kinds of reports and long documents, but we want to just make it real simple for them, and then reference it so they know we're not making this stuff up. And this was our LA coalition. And what we did is we did ours in 2018. It was around the anniversary of the US bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So our city also honored the Association of American Hiroshima and Nagasaki A-bomb survivors, ASA. At the same time, we work with the student group. The resolution efforts ended up inspiring a global effort, the I Can Cities Appeal campaign after the LA resolution was passed. Now there are resolutions throughout the country, throughout the world, hundreds of them. In most cases, they're calling on their country to support the TPNW. Many, if not most of the Back from the Brink resolutions also call for support of the TPNW. And so of the, I don't know how many hundreds and hundreds there are for ICANN, most of the US resolutions that are part of the city's appeal came to Back from the Brink. We now have, in the last 2 years, established a hub network. And this is part of what's blowing my mind. When I was putting this PowerPoint together, I was like, wow, because even when I did it 2 years ago, it was half of this. So these are groups of people. It can be two or three people, or it can be an organization that decide that they want to organize in their area in support of the policy platforms and nuclear abolition in general. And not just doing resolutions, but public events, all kinds of things that folks do in their communities. But this has really helped us in terms of building pressure and bringing that pressure on up. The faith, we have an incredible, of those 499 organizations, 173 are faith organizations, and there are 26 Pax Christi chapters also who have endorsed. So there's a photo from us at the conference in 2022, also joined with the Poor People's Campaign that year. And now we have Danny Hall, who is used to be with SGI, a Buddhist organization. He's now our faith organizer. And so he's doing Moral Mondays with the Poor People's Campaign and doing a blog report backs every week on our website. So that is really been a great development. I jumped myself, but I would also say that many of the resolution efforts have been led by Pax Christi, and Rhode Island in particular. They're either usually the chapters, part of the coalition, or in some cases are taking the lead. In Rhode Island, they got the state assembly and the state senate to adopt resolutions. Youth organizing, a couple of years ago, Dr. Ira Helfand, some of you may know, spoke to some students at his alma mater, Exeter College, and some students, and this is where I think the agency makes a difference. This time, he's talked to students so many times, all of these speeches, but this time now he had something that they could do, get involved with Back from the Brink. They took it to heart. They founded their own organization now, Students for Nuclear Disarmament. They now have chapters and are really doing incredible work and are helping us with that other challenge that we have in this field, which is that so much of us, so many people who do this work are older and getting older. And so now we are seeing new generations getting involved. We also work to mobilize local and state elected officials, and this now, in these days where democracy is in such dire straits, our entire organizing model is built on democracy. So when we're talking to members of Congress now, even I was with ANA in DC a couple of weeks ago, you get this sort of like, there's nothing we can do. You get a very different response on the local level. And mayors become state senators, and city councilors become, governors. And so we've already seen now where our work in 2018 to do the California state resolution, we now have 4 of the people who are in the state legislature now are members of Congress. So when we move our congressional in, we can say, hey, remember in 2018, you supported this. So we have over 430, and their voices are strong and they're inspiring. They understand that that nuclear weapons are a local issue. It will be cities that will be targeted. It is our tax dollars that are being taken. And so we're seeing more and more vocal leadership from mayors, from city councilors, from state legislators, and from counties too. We did our first side event at 3MSP this year, which is the annual meeting for the parties who have signed the TPNW. And we had the mayor of Rochester, New York. We had a councilwoman from Chicago. We had the mayor of Hamburg, Germany was there. And it was an incredible discussion that really also just drove home like that they take this some and more, the more that we talk to them, local and state elected officials really do take this issue very seriously. Public safety is their #1 concern. And so when their constituents come and talk to them about this, some of them are standing up and wanting to do more. We work with Mayors for Peace, and they also led the effort. Another year, they have been able to pass a resolution at the United States Conference of Mayors calling for nuclear abolition. And now we have our federal legislative organizing vehicle. We have for 3 years, I think it was HRES 1865, and it was 37. Now, anyway, last year, the last Congress, we had HRES 77. It largely mirrors the Back from the Brink platform. It got 45 co-sponsors. The follow-on this year is HRES 317, introduced by Congressman McGovern and from Massachusetts and Jill Takuda from Hawaii. It also has those same policies in it, but it has some more things as well. It also calls for continuing the moratorium on nuclear testing, on providing, it calls on for plans for just transition for communities where their whole livelihoods depend on nuclear weapons. And it also calls for recognition of the need for compensation for victims and environmental remediation as well. And by the way, that is Megan Hughes. She is PSRLA's grassroots organizer, and she is awesome and teaching me a lot. Sure.
What you just said about communities where they depend a lot on a lot of resistance.
Well, yes, we do, and to some degree, this is it's an acknowledgement. I mean, it's an acknowledgement. Like, we understand that in some places their local economy depends on nuclear weapons. And some of the folks that work there, in fact, most of the workers that work there aren't bad. They will need something else to do. If we abolish nuclear weapons, when we abolish nuclear weapons, we need to provide and care for the people whose livelihoods depended on them. Maybe not the ones at the top. So what are we doing to support HRES 317? People are meeting with their legislators. We had 6 students go and drop letters. We had a sign-on letter from 140 organizations that was hand-delivered to every member of Congress on Trinity Day. We now have 28 co-sponsors. I will say this bill was introduced in April, so to go to 28 just from April is pretty good, but if we had 45 for HRES 77, I wanted to have 80 or 100 by the end of 2026, and I think we can do it. And so now we're up to 28. We have other ways of cultivating congressional leadership. Just 2 days ago, there were special orders. We had 5 members of Congress giving speeches on the floor about nuclear weapons. We have Nuclear Prayer Day coming up, and we asked some of those same members of Congress if they would submit videos, and the videos are coming in. And this is what I'm saying. It's like we are seeing not just like, okay, I'll co-sign it, but we're seeing a little more now. Okay, you co-sign this. Can you do a little more now? And we're starting to see it. And finally, we have a Senate version of the bill. This was just announced last week, starting out with 5 senators. And it is, again, it's a similar resolution that mirrors the Back from the Brink policy points. And of course, coming up, we have the 80th, which is an incredible opportunity to do this work, to work on a local resolution, to meet with your local and state elected official. We have a sign-on letter now effort where we're asking local and state officials to sign on to a letter to their to members of Congress to co-sponsor HRES 317 and HRES 323. So that's another way that folks get involved and also start the conversation. And there's lots of events, of course, that will be happening. And so again, the really 3 concrete things you can do. Urge your your House rep to co-sponsor HRES 317, urge your senator to co-sponsor HRES 323. We're sort of calling them the congressional Back from the Brink resolutions, just to sort of not have to do so many numbers. And then there's this local sign-on effort. If you aren't on our list, I don't have a link to give you, but I really am excited about the local sign-on letter. It's just a thing. We're seeing more, I think one of the reasons that we're seeing more engagement really are that cities are going to be the front lines of the resistance, and they're understanding more and more. You know, we used to hear, "Why are you talking to us about nuclear weapons? It's not our issue. It's not local issue." We don't hear so much of that anymore. I think people are understanding that what happens in DC and around the world affects us very much on a local level. And then just the last list of things to sign up for our email and newsletter. If you have an organization, you can endorse and also become a coalition partner. We have online local organizing meetups every third Tuesday. Again, we have resolution efforts, co-sponsoring public events. You can form or join a hub. Letters to the editor are always helpful. And then following us on social media is also something that folks can do that is a pretty light lift. And here's how you can stay in touch.
Thank you so much to all of the speakers that attended today. So now we're just going to open the floor for questions. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Alex Vernon from across the river in Canada, and I guess my question is coming from the standpoint of somebody who's not a U.S. citizen. I'm a Canadian citizen and a Jamaican citizen. So I can say, well, this is not my business, I don't have nuclear power, but I guess if you could put me to, any of the speakers could put me to some resources, what do those of us who come from countries that are sort of under the nuclear umbrella, what can we do? When, you know, the counter argument in places like Canada now is like, oh, we can't rely on the United States for protection, so we've got to increase our military spending to become self-sufficient. And you get, you know, places either seeking nuclear weapons of their own or increasing their military spending, because it's like there's a dilemma there. I'm wondering if you can direct me to some resources as to how we from non-nuclear countries can contribute to non-nuclear world.
Dr. Alan Pietron, do you have an answer for that?
I might. I'll start by saying I'm also a Canadian citizen and an American citizen. So one thing I came across about 10 years ago, and I'll say this vaguely because I don't remember the specifics, but Costa Rica, the country, you know, obviously non-nuclear, sort of non-military, they do a lot of anti-nuclear work. I met their U.S. ambassador once at a non-proliferation conference. So that would be one place I would say to look. But it is alarming. I was just speaking to some Italian scholars where now in Italy, because they too are thinking like the US is unreliable, we need to increase our own military spending. How are they doing that? Well, they're cutting education budgets to funnel it into the military. And that's happening across Europe. You know, Canada's increasing its military budget. That's going to come at an expense. So it is a moment that I fear, and I wish I had more resources and answers for you, but I don't right now.
Yes, sir.
Two things of what we could do, the Oak Ridge annual event, people out at the Nevada test site. But since the mid-70s, there's been a gathering, a witness at Offutt Air Force Base. It's been talked about the muscle of our nuclear force. But that would Offutt, O-F-F-U-T-T, just south of Omaha. So since the mid-70s, there's been witness. We're down to just a handful of people. If you're any place that you're looking for a place to go, come to Offutt on the 6th. But we also, they've been gathering, I wasn't there at the beginning, but on Holy Innocents Day, 28th of December. So we read the Matthew account there. We read Child Bomb at 6th of August. And another totally different thing would be the U.S. Air Force turned one of our silos over to the Park Service near Wall, South Dakota. And that would be a good educational spot. I haven't gotten out there. I want to get out there and say, people are there, and most of the missile silos are out in rangeland and you don't have legal access to. Here, if the public's invited, we ought to be there and speaking up. So an interest, anybody that might be interested in organizing or showing up at South Dakota. What was the other point? Oh, we're in a big, huge, numbers too big to fathom, of renewing the missiles in the silos. They changed just in May, no longer in the old silos. They were concerned about lead paint and asbestos. Seriously. Of the people that were down there working, banning, staffing the missiles. but we're hundreds of billions of dollars over 30 years to put in new ICBMs, now no longer there, but supposedly on Air Force bases yet to be determined. So
Wow,
coming to a
thank
case.
you. Okay, I have one more question over here. Yes, sir.
I don't have a question, but a comment.
A comment.
Of course, I lived and worked at Japanese society for 24 years. In Iwakuni for one summer working in the ocean. My own personal experience at the Atomic Bomb Memorial, okay? What was the target for the Enola Gay when it dropped the first atomic weapon? No, it was the bridge. Well, the first one was actually Yokohama, but due to the weather, it ended up being Hiroshima. That was the third target of the day. But the target in Hiroshima was the bridge. And what was the bridge? Tomoe Bashi. And this is the hypocrisy of U.S. foreign policy. Tomoe Bashi, the bridge where friends meet. The bridge where friends meet, Tomoe Bashi. The other effect that I had at that, had an effect on me at that memorial center was the bridge itself. The whole bridge, its stone bridge, was black except for one part where there was the silhouette of a woman, and that is in white, because she took the blast effect, and so she shadowed the bridge, which is why her shadow on the bridge is white, and the rest is black. The rest of the bridge was black. I guess the third point is that I'm trying to be brief. I'm sorry, I talked too much, but the Jesuit University in Tokyo, probably the most beautiful woman, Japanese woman I ever knew, Hamamata. She's from Nagasaki. She could never marry. Why? Because of fear of genetic effects on children, so she never married. The last point is, I mean, this is all politics. So I recommend people go and look in to see, the decision, who supported the dropping of atomic weapons, who did not, and how that worked out is really interesting. Because this is politics, the negotiations that went on, whether to drop the atomic weapon or not, and what the reasons were behind it. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow.
I'd like to add one more thing that I wish I had gotten to, is that in Nagasaki, it was called, right name of the church. And it was the second largest Roman Catholic cathedral in the Far East, and it was built by the Japanese, was destroyed by the Nagasaki bomb. And there's a haunting picture of a Madonna that sat down at the table. Back in the room where the tables are, she's out with the box. I made a point to make some pictures of that. But I want to-
Yeah.
Okay, so that's going to be it for questions. We do have to be out of the room, but I want to thank each and every one of you for attending this insightful and very needed conversation. It doesn't stop here. A lot of the work is happening out there. We need to stay involved. We need to stay in touch. So please feel free to continue these conversations outside of this panel. And thank you, Dr. Pietrobon, for attending virtually. We're so happy to have you.